Hello, people. This week I read the fantastic I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. I have over here a book called Foundation and Earth by Azimov. And when I bought it, I did it under the impression of, read it for this channel. Don't worry so much about it being, out of order. You don't have to obsess over reading every book series in order anymore. And, it's part of the reason I started this channel. So, the Foundation and Earth, I have, and I had recognized it. I then see this TV show called Foundation on Apple TV, and I knew it clicked because I had that book. So I'm like, let me try this show. The show's fantastic. And so I'm like, I want more of this. Where does this series start? Well, the series starts all the way with I, Robot, at least according to the author. He gave a rundown one time of how you should read these books in order. So I'm like, well, I gotta go in order because why not? So that's why I picked this one to read. So that show's sort of in my head, but I think I can fairly say that it's not what makes or breaks this book. It doesn't override the thing. What you have here in this book is really, really fantastic science fiction. I just thought I'd tell you the origin story here. We start with, it's kind of a interview with the CEO of a thing called American Robotics, or American Robot. And so it's sort of this, it gives it like a historical feel. Like, all the things we're going to talk about are things that already happened. It's just humans doing what humans do. When a big time CEO retires, there's going to be various interviews, think pieces. We're going to look back at their life. This kind of an energy. It comes with that energy. And it does this throughout the book, where we have that overall story going. So I know in the back of my head, this is an action that's happening. Within this action are these little individual, almost vignette style stories. But they're told not in a sense of our Susan, the CEO, telling the story. It's somewhere in between. So some part we have the concept that she's telling this journalist this story. We also have the semi-concept that it's maybe a known story, a la, Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky. There's a vague cultural awareness of this, what happened in amongst people, and sometimes you'll meet someone who was more involved or less involved, and it might change your perspective on that. It gets to be this kind of a feel. And in that, it means, there's parts in where we're not sure. I think by design, who exactly is telling what part of this story. It's the same as any story. You have various people who come to varying understandings of what happened, even with cultural moments. Was OJ guilty or not? How did you take that? You weren't born when it happened. What do you think about watching, what happened with America taking that? This kind of, we all come at it different. But all of it ends up becoming kind of like a collective idea of the story. There's an overall idea of what happened with OJ. There's the reality. There's how it happened for the people involved. There's how it happened for the people who watched. And there's how it happened for the people who came after, who watched the overarch of it. It gives me this kind of an energy throughout the book. It's really, really cool. Add to this a very subtle, like, drip of a world building situation. So our person, our journalist, he's writing for Interplanetary Press. He says it like you would say the AP or for the New York Times. That's just a newspaper. It's just something that gets the news out. But of course I understand English, and you said interplanetary. So instantly my mind goes to what all it would take to become an interplanetary civilization to such a degree that a newspaper can function between all the worlds. This is the type of world building he does. He'll drop these subtle clues in that fire the brain as you're getting pulled along on these interesting vignettes. It's really magically done. And I'm a little bit surprised that more people don't recommend this book, to be honest. It's that kind of good. So we have what we call there's two things that this book does that just absolutely tickles me in a fantastic way. One, it's set in the oh so distant future of 1999. I don't know why when the story says, and it was written in like the 30s or the 50s, when they say like the year 2000 is when this will happen, that for them that was so futuristic, and to know like I lived through it and it was normal. It just tickles me to no end. The other thing it does is it uses, what is it called? Through the use of psychomath. That's the term it uses, psychomath. And I'm just like, it's hard to explain, but you could just say I used math and it doesn't sound smart. If you say I used trigonomics or geometry, you're like, oh, he's smart. But the future can't use algebra. I mean, it can't use algebra to fix things because I know algebra and we don't have flying cars. You got to give me something. You got to give me something. So when they go Neo-Tokyo or psychomath, it's just futuristic-y enough that it tastes really good when, you sip it. It just settles in my stomach so well. I absolutely love it. So instead of trying to get bogged down into too much of how math works, you just understand it's psychomath. And it must work in there somehow. It's fantastic. So with the use of psychomath, scientist Robertson makes a positronic brain that the math shows on paper that this is how it should function. That is, it's a brain that can sort of mimic what human brains do. It's a super calculating machine. It's going to be the brain of a robot. And so with these positronic brains, we then have, I would say, the spine of the story, the thing that it relies on the most, on top of this psychomath that just makes this brain work. The positronic brain just works. Along with this, we have the 3 laws of robotics. That is, A, 1, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. 2, a robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first and the second law. So, I can give them, of course we're going to say, there's no way, people will this, people will that. I'm like, of course we all think of these things. But he doesn't jump the gun. We're at least going to pretend we would have some kind of safeguard onto this thing we made. The vignettes then explore this concept, positronic brain and these rules of robotics in various different ways. We have Robbie and a little girl who becomes obsessed with her robot. It then saves her life, and you go, did it like the girl? It probably didn't. It was just following its programming. But people take the story like it was. And that's some part of our interaction with our technology, is how we take it. We name boats. We name our cars. We don't particularly name planes for some reason. We love our computers. We anthropomorphize everything. And it sort of starts to speak to that, but in a subtle way. Again, it's not hitting any subjects too hard. It's almost, you feel it setting the stage. We then go from there to a space facility on Mercury. Very cool. It's cool inside because it uses the heat. It uses any heat as a means of generating energy, and then that energy generated can cool the facility. So I'm assuming there's some kind of force field, and the hotter it is, the stronger the force field is, and you can't get hotter than Mercury because it's 2 feet from the sun. It's just such, again, very subtle. It's just dropped there, and then we move on with our story. I absolutely love this type of world building. They have a problem with their robots not wanting to go to a, selenium pool or some mess like this. There's something that's stopping the robot from completing its mission, and they, 1, don't want to burn to death, and 2, sort of don't want to fail in their employment. And so they start to realize that some of the laws are in conflict. I think it's trying to obey sort of a generic order, but also not wanting to kill itself by getting in sort of a dangerous situation. And the conflict of the 2 laws makes it sort of seem drunk. They did overcome this essentially by putting themselves in physical danger so that then the thing will overcome the initial shock, break through, save the person, and then they can go about their work. And again, it's a simple story, but what it's showing you is humanity. If we had the toy, if we have the thing, we're going to poke, we're going to prod. How far can I bend the plastic before it breaks? This is what we do with every toy we've ever had. Why do we drive cars too fast? Why don't we make them even go that fast? We push the limits on all technology. And in this sense, like, again, because I watched the Foundation show, it mentions some kind of robot war. That's not new in science fiction. So even without the show, my brain would have jumped to, am I going to have a robot war? Because it's science fiction and these are positronic brains and they're robots. But what I love here is that we aren't jumping right to the war. That we start to see this slow erosion to what should be a failsafe by our own hand. Humans are the ones who are going to mess with these failsafes, and do ourselves in. This is how it's going to be. So if we'd have just left it, it wouldn't have been a problem. They don't just leave it. We prod, we push. If we can just get this to get our job done and get ourselves paid, it'll be fine. Well, what happens to the system when that happens? Somebody else's problem. This is what we do. The guys' names are Powell and Donovan. They are shown in like 3 different little vignettes. It's a fun little through line. Those guys then get sent from there to some other facility because they did good. It's a facility or a space station. I can't remember which. It might be a space station. In any case, they put together a robot, like they piece it together right there, and they want to send it in to do this job. They're watching it. They want to see if it's going to do something wherein it shoots a beam of energy or something down to the earth that we need for some reason. Again, when you deal with things on an industrial scale, even now, even with regular life, it can get dangerous. If you did it wrong, Chernobyl happens. So this isn't unusual to me. So in story it works that if they get this beam wrong, it's going to cut a swath through town and kill who knows how many people on top of getting them fired. So they're dead set on it working, and they need these robots to do it. And theoretically, because a robot can do math much better than humans, it should do it dead on perfect. But we have to check it first. We can't just leave it. So they put this robot together named QT. Now, in talking to it, they realize it has like a weird it's deityized the machine in the center that shoots the beam off. Its purpose for being there is to calculate, feed the raw materials in, and it shoots a beam off. Well, in doing this and in coming to being, it thinks that the beam, the machine, made it. And then Donovan's like, no, we made you. And it's just like brushing them off for whatever reason. It's the same as a computer. You can put a bunch of computers together, and sometimes this one's just working funny for some reason. An eventuality in pieces and parts. However the positronic brain worked, however the math works, this eventuality spat out this robot that has this idea about the universe. So it is sure that the machine made it. It also made humans, so that robots can know that they're superior somehow, for some reason. Donovan's like, I have all these books that show you that that's not the case. And the robot's like, I don't believe the source of any of these books. I'm pretty sure the robot master made it so that you could read it and feel good about yourself, because you're a weak human. Good gravy. He's like, I could take you to Earth where there's a bunch of other people. And the robot's like, you expect me to believe that there's just a planet full of weak beings like yourself that can't work in space, that need hydration and oxygen, that grow old and die, that are subject to disease? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. He's like, there's nothing you could do. There's nothing you can do to convince this robot that it wasn't made by this superior being. It bugs the guys at first, but then the one guy's like, look, bro, it's not our problem. Let it think what it wants. It fired the beam off to perfection. The guy was kind of worried, like, this weird nut of a robot's going to break something, but it fires the beam off to perfection. And so they go, job well done. We'll just tell their boss that, it went a little bumpy, but it worked out. And, let the robot psychologist deal with whatever that crap robot's thinking. Not our problem. Another group of scientists makes a robot that can read your brain waves. And in that, it starts to lie. It understands your brain waves are saying, like, this one lady's in love with a guy who's younger, and she's older. And so her rational self knows that's not going to happen. It's not going to work. But the feelings want to grab onto something. So when the robot says, he actually loves you, I can read his thoughts, she lets it in her head. It tells other lies to other people, and it causes a kerfuffle, as you can imagine. And eventually they sort of make it lose its mind. So if you trap it saying, tell me the truth, but if you tell me, it'll hurt me mentally, it won't want to tell you, but then it's urged to by its, the second law, to tell you. And in that, it seizes up and it can't function anymore. That's how they get rid of that one. And then here we have a little break wherein the guy interviewing's like, yeah, that's interesting and all. We all know those stories, but what does he say? He says, space stations are already outdated, and robot mining is just a given, and we've never produced another one of the mind-thinky robots. So, what's the point of these stories? And again, it's that world building where I can now add a level of space travel that makes a space station a thing of the past. Why would we stop? Oh, because we can land on other planets, and at such a rate and with such ease that I don't even need to store stuff in space. I just skip that altogether. It's a fascinating way to give me information, to world build. There's two more main situations that happen that I remember, or that I wrote down in my notes. I didn't remember it all. I wrote notes. We have, what do they call it? Hyperbase. Hyperbase is working with varying levels of radiation. So if I put a suit on, I can deal with radiation for a small amount of time. But, the first law of robotics is I can't have you dealing with radiation. It's dangerous. So when they go to deal with it, their robots come and sweep the people out. If it's at a lower rate, they can sort of work with it, but then it fries the robot brains, so they're losing money. So they smudge the first law. I'm like, of course we're going to. Now, he didn't say it, but of course I'm thinking it. The military would smudge the first law probably before anyone else. You make a robot that can kill humans. That's the first thing we do, right? But then in the lore, there's a big resistance to robots on Earth as a whole. So maybe politically, we would force our militaries not to do this thing. So, I can play it either way. In any case, the story he decided to tell, which isn't him, it's our CEO of a robotics company. The story she decided to tell was this base, essentially a military base, smudging the first law. So that they still won't kill a person, but they smudge the part that says, what does it say? Or through an action allow a human being to come to harm. They smudge that part. And they're like, this way, they'll watch us go into radiation, but then, still won't kill us. The problem is that they'd also told it not to tell anyone, and now it's hidden amongst other robots, and we got to sort this thing out. We got to find it, neutralize it, before it can, leak out in some way. Obviously, you can't have that one getting out. And the lady makes a good point in that, and again, it's just an example of just a small little sliver of a thinking. So, if you've smudged that part of the law, then the robot can, let's say, hold a large block over a human, huge boulder. I can't drop it on the person because they'll die. So, I'll let it go, intending to recatch it. So, in the course of letting it go, I now don't have possession of it. Gravity does. And then so instead of recatching it, I say, well, it's in gravity's hands now. Gravity then propelled the rock, and the rock then crushed you, and I didn't do it. It's sort of death by inaction. Right? This is the fear that she has, and she's constantly telling them, like, kill the whole batch, but they don't kill the whole batch. They find the ones they need, and they solve their problem. And then the last one is a robot that's just a brain. This one, they're trying to make a what did they call it? A hyperatomic drive. They make a hyperatomic drive. They're trying to get the math to work. But something about this problem fried another company's brain, a big computerized brain they have, their top line positronic brain. And so one of the lady theorizes that it must be something to do with death. So what we'll tell the computer, it will feed it the information slowly, and we'll tell it if you come to a problem whose solution is harm or death to a human, don't panic. Just sort of pause. Feed us the data anyway, and then go on. We don't care too much about that right now. That's the word she used. And this robot took that word and went with it. And rather quickly, almost haphazardly says, like, yo, yeah, I solved your problem. So they're like excited, like you made a hyperatomic drive that can get us deep interstellar travel. He's like, yeah, give me 6 months and some robots, I'll make it for you. Exactly what he does. They then get 2 guys in the ship to test it. Those guys wander around, don't see an engine. Next thing you know, they're not anywhere near their starting position. And they're kind of panicking because they're in a ship with no means of actual controls that's full of just beans and milk. It's the only food on there. They're about to lose their mind. And so in the course of talking to this robot, they come to the realization that, it took that sort of order seriously enough so that we allowed it to at least be aware of math that would kill a human. So, something about our hyperdrive will kill a person. And they theorize that it demoleculizes you or some mess, like, how hyperdrives work. It puts you in a dimension wherein you're technically dead, but it's so brief that when it takes you out of that dimension, you're not actually dead. This kind of science fiction energy. So in essence, you're dead for a moment and then back to life. And because she says we don't care about it, it was allowed to, in its mind, work through that math and give us a solution. The solution gave humanity interstellar drives, and now we're colonizing all over the universe. But from her perspective, she's troubled by it, because it means that somewhere along the way, the use of this drive killed these two people. And that's what it describes in the book, in this weird kind of mental way. Like a living death. Like you're aware of a death that's happening. And, you can imagine what that would do to your brain. It's very tenuous. It'd be like, to go through this tunnel, you have to zap you with a defibrillator. So you're technically dead for a second, but then we zap you back and you're back to life. You're like, yeah, but we're playing with something we probably shouldn't be playing with. This kind of energy. I said two, but I saw the last one. Quinn. Quinn's running for office. And everyone thinks he's a robot. And the way they tell the story, I think he's a robot too. First they're worried that he never eats or drinks in public. Then it turns into the weird political mind games of how do you prove you're not a robot if you can make a robot with a brain good enough for a human that looks like a person. And you're like, well, make it break one of the laws. I'm like, you want me to tell that person to kill that person to prove he's not a robot? No one's doing that. That's ridiculous. Because we now have the point where the sort of laws of robotics are paralleling themselves to just standard moral laws. So a good person might look like a robot. It gets real hazy. And in this one's the one where it sort of makes clear I'm not exactly sure who's telling me the story, because it doesn't give me the definitive answer, I don't think. Pretty sure we elected a robot mayor at some point accidentally. Very interesting. But all of it collectively comes to a chapter called The Inevitable Conflict. And here, I guess the root, just, the sort of the root of all these things. Well, you could feel it. It's building to something. And this point is that something. And it describes sort of human nature, human history, wherein the world looks like it works one way until some new thing, like two conflicting ideas. Sort of your Catholic versus Ottoman empires. Your Habsburgs versus Bourbons. Just two things that look like they run the world. They fight. The war doesn't settle it. This new wave, this new thing, this, now here comes Spain and exploring the new world. Here comes, the power of France or some other thing. It's always some other thing that comes and sort of washes the old away. And that we have a pattern of this. It's like a natural cosmic pattern. And we came to a point where we let sort of ideological wars replace the old wars, wherein religious fervor has been added to economics. This is your communism, capitalism. Remember, it's in the 50s. But we're not too far off from that now, where we're not religiously run like they did in the 1800s. But there's kind of a moral code that seems to be in effect for people. And we're letting information be, I guess, the gospel of our ways of thinking. I have this information that says, that you don't do this, it's wrong. Or I have the opposite. Trump's bad, Trump's good. The war in Ukraine you shouldn't have it. We should help them more. Israel genocide, Israel not genocide. We have just these massively conflicting things. And it's the same as these other conflicts. There are ways of thinking that lead to war. And in his version, we would have come to atomic destruction at some point. They were big scared of this in the 50s. We're less scared of it, even though, the danger hasn't gone anywhere. The nukes are still there. We just haven't set them off yet. In any case, he says that these positronic brains then came and sort of settled that, which, if you look at history, our computer and the internet sort of doing the same thing. So he's not too far off. Not exactly a positronic brain, but it is a brain. We ask Google all sorts of things, and it comes to us with answers. And every day we're pressing to make that thing smarter. A la AI. I can ask this computer all sorts of things. It'll feed answers to me. He takes the same thing, the same concept in his book. This inevitable conflict is still coming. That you can't escape this cosmic nature, so to speak. He says, we took a positronic brain, which is just, a thinking computer, and used it to make a better one. And then use that one to make a better one. And use that one to make a better one. The concept of the tool is helping you reach further than you could reach. You see? Again, it works the same with a computer. I'm smarter because that computer's there. And at some point, we go, but how smart are you? Because you can't do that math. Google's doing the math for you. Right? This is the scary territory we end up in this book. Because what he says is, those stories you just told, the ones we just read, seem anomalous. They're just random happenings. But he doesn't think it's possible for that to be random. He says they're circuits. It's made in an orderly fashion. Then the next obvious thing is to check the math. Does the math in any way work that this is on purpose? And he says that's our problem. We're beyond the point in lore now. We're beyond the point of checking the math. Without the positronic brain, I can't tell you if the positronic brain is wrong or right. In their world, economics doesn't function. We're using the positronic brains to make sure there's not overproduction or underproduction, or that people don't starve, or that there's not overpopulation. It's probably, controlling where flights go, controlling hyperstellar travel, all the nuances. And I'm like, I can see that reality coming. Even now, even today, we're trying to lean more and more of everything onto AI. People are going to react the way they react in this book. Some people are going to freak the crap out about it. Other people will be completely normal with it. And yet the thing will march itself on. Right? And he says in this, it's marching itself on. And if these aren't accidental and purposeful, what's happening? And they essentially ask the computer, and it gives them sort of a non-answer answer that's wrapped in vagueness, so that it can be overproducing robots to some end that we don't know about, and we have no way of checking it. That's the sort of the state he leaves it in. And then you run through all of those stories again, not as happenstance, but as now part of a robot thinking idea. What is it? It's working each finger one at a time until it has a good solid fist that it can punch you with. This is the vibe you end up left with. It's very fun. It's a very fun vibe. But it's just, you see so many of these fun elements in this book. I always bring up this computer. I think that's about a 50-year span that we're covering in this fake history. And that amount of change can happen in 50 years if you push it. If we have a technology that can do a thing. Right? If tomorrow we come up with some Apple brain that I can just talk to, and it sells like the iPhone, then it's not going to be left alone. It's not going to be good enough. Every year, Apple or Samsung or whatever the company is going to double, triple down on that tech to make it even better, to make it more sellable, to make it more wanted by the people. And then we got to think, where are we steamrolling ourselves to? Because our old tech, our old war, our old centuries all led us to the atomic bomb. Right? We barrel rolled to that. All the smart people got us a bomb that kills everyone. right? So, how are we going to turn computers into killing us? That's the fun. Again, it's not. There's 100 stories that run this kind of angle on robots taking over the world, etc. But I don't know of many that give it this kind of a base, this kind of a building block, that it's really walking through corporate energy, workplace accidents, workplace energy. It's just nuts and bolts humans, and you just feel like you're watching, this thing rise out of the water that's going to be a problem. It's extremely well written. I really love it. And I highly recommend it. It's not long. Very fun. Okay, people. That was iRobot. These are your lovely ads. These are my books. I wrote them. I haven't written a robot book yet. I think I should. I at least got to write a robot in a book at some point. It's too fun. You can buy these. You can get them on Kindle Unlimited, which will then be kind of a Spotify for books situation, wherein I get some cheddar if you read my books. And then if you don't like them, you're going to read other books and not, lose out on hard-earned cash. Okay, people. I will see you all next week.